Wreck-It Ralph, just like so many other animated films, was an instant commercial success when it was released in 2012. No surprise, especially given that the director for the movie was Rich Moore, the same director who worked his magic on so many episodes of Futurama and The Simpsons. It was lauded by critics, especially for the way in which it treated rather complex, mature themes, such as self-empowerment, willful change, and good versus evil, all while giving us some sweet video game references and a positive message.
I will never be good, and that's not bad. There's no one I'd rather be than me.
Its sequel, Ralph Breaks the Internet, brought that feel-good positivity to the internet, which, let's be real, the internet could use more of. But despite all the good vibes Wreck-It Ralph and Ralph Breaks the Internet seems to ooze, there's always another side to the coin, a darkness that balances out light, akin to the principle of yin and yang. Well, at least if you dig a little deeper anyway, which is what we like to do. I'm Brad with Wicked Binge, and these are dark theories about Wreck-It Ralph and Ralph Breaks the Internet that change everything. Let's get started.
And these are for you. Heart, 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 heart.
One game at a time, Ralph.
Disney princesses have stalkers. Let's kick off with a theory specific to the sequel, Ralph Breaks the Internet. This one involves all the Disney princesses that Vanellope stumbles upon. As you'll notice, when Vanellope stumbles into their private room, all of them immediately go on the defensive, each of them armed and seemingly ready to kill.
Hi.
Cinderella smashes her glass shoe like she's ready for a bar fight. Merida grabs her bow, Mulan unsheaths her sword. Everybody is ready for a fight. According to DeviantArt user TrackForce, this is because they've all experienced stalkers in the past. After all, it is the internet. In fact, the user suggests this is a subtle joke that suggests this happens regularly.
No, good lord, who would do that?
The whole movie is a giant comedic commentary on the internet, and well, unfortunately, stalking isn't exactly out of the realm of possibility.
5 minutes, princesses.
Calhoun's backstory is even more tragic than you thought. We're kicking things off with a rather sad, dark look at Calhoun's past, one which will make anyone's heart sigh and weep in sheer sorrow. If you don't have a tissue or a cloth with you to wipe your eyes, grab one quick, because we're about to take you on a very emotional ride. Courtesy of Reddit user, it's gotta make sense.
Fear is a 4-letter word, ladies.
Everyone who's watched the movie knows that Calhoun's story is roped in sadness and pain. But what if we told you that you might have missed an important detail which makes her life all the sadder? In the movie, we're shown Calhoun with her groom on her wedding day. A wedding is supposed to be one of the best days in the life of a couple, especially the bride. However, Calhoun's day turned into a complete disaster when a cybug charged into the chapel and devoured her partner just as they were about to state their vows. Literally, till death did them part. This isn't the truly tragic part. According to It's Gotta Make Sense, cybugs transform into the entity which they consume. To make matters worse, they tend to transform almost instantly. Based on the scenarios we've seen, namely when a cybug ate candy, and when another one devoured Ralph's gun, cybugs transform within seconds. You see where this is going, right? Following the aforementioned logic, the cybug which ate Calhoun's groom turned into her now dead lover within seconds. Her once beautiful partner was now a mutated, unappealing creature which she had to kill. This is where the real tragedy comes in. It's not so much the fact that her partner was killed, rather that she had to stain her own hands to do it. The only thing more tragic than losing a loved one is being the cause of his or her death. This is the reason why the soldier states that Calhoun was, quote,
"She's programmed with the most tragic backstory ever."
Vanellope's father might be King Candy. Another interesting theory to have surfaced recently is the idea that King Candy might be the biological father of Princess Vanellope.
Vanellope von Schweetz!
Well, biological in the human sense. Before we dive in, we need to thank Reddit user The Pixelated Banana for breaking it down.
All hail our rightful ruler, King Candy.
The Pixelated Banana begins the hypothesis by recreating a time in the past where King Candy was king, ruler of Sugar Rush. Hypothetically, Vanellope, as the father's daughter, was the princess of the kingdom. Then comes Turbo and turns the whole thing upside down. This is where we need you to use your imagination to really understand where this Reddit user is coming from. Based on the rationale provided, Turbo joins the action, longing to get in on some racing. However, he faced an obstacle. King Candy would never allow someone as vile, repulsive, and unsavory as Turbo to roam freely in his kingdom. So, what does he do? Completely remodify King Candy's code and take over his body, while removing Vanellope as a central player. That way, he can be the superstar that he wants to be. Therefore, when Turbo dies, she inherits the power to rule, simply because her father was King Candy. She is the next in line to the throne.
All hail the rightful ruler of Sugar Rush, Princess Vanellope.
Yes, we get that she's still a princess. However, the way she was received by the public was more like they regarded her with an even higher degree of respect, as if she were a queen. Definitely a theory worth considering. It's also extremely sad when you consider how Vanellope's life was drastically changed by the efforts of one sadistic person who wanted to do things his way. Ralph's fate is doomed to repeat itself. This time, Reddit user Superblue is the harbinger of a tale so heartbreaking that it would make even the strongest of people sob and wallow in sadness. Well, maybe that's an exaggeration, but it's still kinda sad. Before we even get into the theory, the crux of it hinges upon the notion that all characters in the movie are afraid of having their games unplugged. In doing so, their lives are ended, and when they are eventually reconnected, they restart without any prior memories of their previous lives. Memories of good times, bad times, fights, conversations, all gone forever. With that as a solid base, we now bring it to Ralph and his insecurities. The user is of the belief that Ralph has a deep embedded fear that his life and fate is bound to repeat itself, something over which he has absolutely no control.
I don't make things, I break things.
His life is cyclical because it's entirely dependent on whether the game gets shut down or not. If there is a power outage or any freak accident which interrupts the state of the game, causing it to turn off, Ralph's life is cut short.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're out of order.
Sweet mercy!
This means that all the hard work he put into becoming a good guy will go to waste, because he will be restored as a villain, something from which he has no hope of ever escaping. Consequently, he, along with all the other characters for that matter, are constantly in this loop, living in fear of their lives being snatched without a moment's notice. Such a sad theory, because Ralph really tries to make himself pure, but his efforts can go up in flames in a moment's notice. His hopes, dreams, and aspirations are but mere fantasies in a world where reality is always one power outage away. That's gotta be a metaphor for something, no? Ralph is a virus. On the topic of Ralph's fate, let's talk about what happens in the sequel. Reddit user Mutant Llama has an interesting theory about Ralph's rampage at the end. When he's tearing apart the internet, the news lady mentioned that, quote, nobody knows where it came from. So the question is, where exactly did this form come from?
Just as mysteriously as it appeared, the Wreck-It Ralph virus has vanished.
Considering Ralph is just a piece of code from an old 80s video game and he's not an actual user, it would make sense that his old school programmers would have made him more similar to other simple game characters, like the insects in Hero's Duty, characters who only think about what they're supposed to do. After all, it seems like most of the other game characters just do what they're supposed to do, but Ralph just decides to, out of the blue, go against his programming, creating a chain reaction of defects in other games and the internet. After all, how did BuzzTube videos get onto the internet without a user to upload them? This user's theory suggests that at some point during Ralph's 20 years of operating, his code acquired a defect that caused him to not act as intended, that resulted in him being spread around from game to game and eventually the internet, doing damage along the way, because he's a virus. Yikes, say it ain't so. The Nicelanders' feelings about Ralph still haven't changed. Some things just never change. The same can be said about the Nicelanders and their strictly hate relationship with Ralph.
You see, Ralph, there's no room for you up here.
This is a super quick theory, but worth mentioning. At the end of the film, there isn't even a glimmer of hope that their feelings toward him have improved for the better. To put it bluntly, they still hate him. They throw Ralph's special cake in the mud right in front of his very eyes. What's up with that? Not to mention how cold they act towards the Sugar Rush characters who lose their game in the sequel. People can be so mean.
I'm a sour ball.
Well, beggars can't be choosers, can they? Come along, Condiment.
Do the characters in the game really die? Albeit unlikely, there's a theory offered by Reddit user Pandarth Omega which is interesting and worth mentioning. The user believes that unplugging a game does not equate to the death of a character. Yes, it seems to defy every possible fact shown in the film.
Don't die, because if you die outside your own game, you don't regenerate, ever.
but based on what is being argued, it might not be that far-fetched after all. To preface our discussion, let's first take the conversation between Ralph and King Candy, which took place near the end of the movie's second act. In a nutshell, King Candy suggests that Vanellope will die if the game is unplugged due to a malware glitch in her system. She may cause the game to be regarded as out of order due to character issues. Considering that Vanellope has a few software problems, when the game is restarted, she will die. Or maybe not. According to Pandarth Omega, logically this can't be the case. They paint the scenario of a game being transferred from one arcade to another. In such a case, the game doesn't change because the code remains the same. Based on this logic, the same should be applied to the Wreck-It Ralph universe. The user believes that the characters have merely been brainwashed into believing that they die when a game is restarted. Instead, the characters are simply placed in a comatose state, eventually waking up when the game is restarted. To back this up, the user references the scene where the terrain simply turns into murky pixels, specifically where King Candy chats with Ralph. But then again, if a game machine breaks and ultimately gets scrapped, it's never going to get used again, which is essentially death. Wreck-It Ralph has a lot more to it than meets the eye, a film with substance which will stand the test of time. You can bet that Wreck-It Ralph will be touching lives for years to come. But what do you think? Do any of these theories carry weight? Do you have any dark theories about Wreck-It Ralph of your own? Let us know in the comments section below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. But most importantly, stay wicked.